I miss my job. I loved what I did. I was very proud to serve my country. I loved that my focus was on nuclear counterproliferation. The best part, of course, was being in the field. And once I was outed, I could have stayed, but it was like, well, what's the point? I had the best job. Ugh, I don't want to just sit in headquarters. Makes me nostalgic and it makes me miss it.
Do you love spy books, movies, and TV? Then the Spybrary podcast is for you.
Hello and welcome to episode 263 of the Spybrary podcast. Today on Spybrary, we're joined by none other than Valerie Plame, former CIA covert operative, best-selling author, and an iconic voice in the world of intelligence and espionage. For over a decade, Valerie served on the front lines of national security, operating undercover in some of the world's most complex and volatile environments. Her CIA career and the controversial public outing that ended it has been the subject of headlines, books, and a major Hollywood film. Now Valerie joins us for a very different kind of mission, her Dead Drop 5, where she'll reveal the 5 spy books she chose to stash in a hidden drop in East Berlin. The titles she'll rely on during a covert operation behind the Iron Curtain. From childhood favorites to deeply researched histories, Valerie's picks promise intrigue, insight, and a few surprises. So strap in. This is going to be a Spybrary episode to remember. Welcome to Spybrary, Valerie.
Thank you so much for having me, Shane. What a delight.
It's a delight for us. It's a real treat. And one of our listeners is a big fan of your books. And I'm going to kick off with this question that Matthew Bradford sent to me. And he said, please, can you make a plea with Valerie to finally finish her Vanessa Pearson spy novel trilogy with Sarah Lovett? I realize that's unlikely since it's been more than a decade now since the second one, but it ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. I very much enjoyed the first two.
Well, that's so kind. I feel guilty that I left poor Vanessa Pearson hanging, sort of like, tied to the train tracks. But the good news is I am seriously considering making a third one because it was meant to be a trilogy. And we're in talks to maybe have it optioned for a TV or a movie. So we shall see. That always adds a little bit of, it lights a fire under you. Okay, I got to finish this.
Absolutely.
I've been busy.
Yeah, just a tad, yes. So, and Matthew understands that, but he's a patient guy, is Matthew. I'm sure he'll be prepared to wait to read the book and watch the movie. Before we get into your spy picks, there is an event coming up which you're involved with towards the end of this year in Europe called Spies at Sea. What's that all about, Valerie?
Thank you so much for asking. Yes, I am the host of Spies at Sea Cruise. I've been hosting these conferences in Santa Fe, New Mexico for the last couple years. And it basically started when I called my former CIA colleagues and said, hey, want to come to Santa Fe and talk about espionage stuff? And open to the general public. And I'm so proud of the caliber of speakers we have. These are really top notch. They are highly decorated. They really have done the work. And importantly for me, I like them all. But there's a lot of, to my observation, there's a lot of posers out there. But I know that these people have really done the job. So we decided a bit of a lark. Well, heck, let's do a cruise. And we have partnered with Celebrity Cruise Lines on their newest ship. It's called the Celebrity Ascent. And the itinerary is fantastic. It starts, you embark, you start your cruise in Barcelona. We will go to Malta, Ephesus, Santorini, Mykonos, Naples, and end up in Rome. And in each of those, I shouldn't say in each, but in 3 or 4 of those places, we will have some of our great speakers do a little shore excursion, a little spy tour. This happened here either in recent history or past history. Can you imagine Malta? How fascinating that would be. And then we'll end up at a taverna for lunch, have a boozy lunch, and get back on the ship. And when we're at sea, we'll do half-day programs. And my speakers, again, are outstanding. I have a former acting director of the CIA, Michael Morrell. I have, she was the head of CIA Disguise, Jonna Mendez. She and her husband wrote a book that the movie Argo was based on. It was one of their many stories, and Jonna is she gives a great talk about what it was like fitting disguises, what that was. And in fact, she's got a great little piece on going into the Oval Office when George H.W. Bush was president and fooling the heck out of him. She was wearing a full face mask. She looked like a woman of color, was sitting there for the whole meeting, and then she did kind of the Mission Impossible,
Brilliant.
thing.
Brilliant.
She's actually quite fair, redheadish, doesn't look like that at all. So the president was duly impressed. I have a former senior ops officer, Mark Polymeropoulos. He has served all over the world, expert in the Middle East. He'll tell us what the heck is going on in Israel and Iran. He is also a very potent advocate, as he was a victim of the Havana syndrome. So he talks about that as well, which is an ongoing mystery. I have another very senior officer. He's been chief of station all over the world, Doug Wise. And another woman, Raleigh. She, again, these are all senior officers that have done the work, counterintelligence. Raleigh will speak on women in intelligence. My expertise was in the nuclear field, WMD, so I'll speak to that. And we've also added former president at Penn State, Graham Spanier, who, when he was president at Penn State, led higher education in the United States and their liaison with U.S. intelligence. You might imagine having graduate students from all over the world come to the United States, whether they're from China or Iran or you name it. It's really important to make sure we understand what they're up to. So it promises to be, I think, both fun, entertaining, educational, open to the general public. And if any of your listeners are interested in more information, they can go to our website, which is spiesliesnukes.com.
Fantastic. And you've very kindly given our listeners a discount, which our listeners can find that if in case you're out evading your tail, easy to remember, spybrary.com/263. And you can read all about that there, as well as the dates. It's a 10-day cruise. I've traveled, sailed with Celebrity in the past myself. They are stellar. Outstanding service. So this is very exciting what you put together. And, we're very lucky with podcasts that so many former spies and intelligence experts, give us half an hour of their time to come on to podcasts. But there's nothing beats sitting with a beer or a cup of tea and having a chat with someone who's worked in the shadows in the past.
Exactly. It's an intimate setting. It's not going to be a cast of thousands. And that's even though, of course, the cruise ship is large, we have our own contained spaces, and and it's also a great time of year. It's the beginning of September, best time in the Med. So it's all coming together. So I would be delighted, as you mentioned, your listeners get a discount. So check out spiesliesnukes.com.
And I know it's going to be a great event because quite a few of our listeners have been to your events on Terra Firma in New Mexico and always talk. That's how you first came onto my radar, organizing these. Not your other stuff, obviously, but, with events was through what you were doing in Santa Fe. So I know it's Premier Crew content. There we go.
Yes, I'll work that into the marketing.
Absolutely. Superb. So I'm intrigued to dig into your picks. In fact, the last guest on DD5 was also former CIA, and he'd worked in special forces in Berlin. So it's really interesting, and it's fun for us civilians to actually hear what books former spies enjoy reading. So what's first up for you, Valerie?
First up is where it all started for me, which is A Man Called Intrepid by William Stevenson. I read that when I was maybe 10 or 11. It was just on our family bookshelf. And it's all about World War II and the Enigma machine. And I don't know, I guess I had never thought it just exposed that whole world for me. And it's not like after that I thought, oh, I want to work for the CIA. I didn't at all, but I was so intrigued of how the clandestine side of a nation's foreign policy is so critically important to making sure that the good guys win as much as you can. And ever since then, of course, I've been intrigued by World War II stories, of which there are legion. And I'm reading one right now, not on my list, but it's Eric Larson's The Splendid and the Vile, about the very beginning days of the Blitz over London. And Churchill, of course, loved anything to do with spies. And,
Yes.
the OSS and MI6 worked together closely for the Allied victory.
Yeah, I need to get to the old War Office, which is now a Raffles Hotel in London, because
Yes,
that's
you
I
can
know
still go
McCloskey.
underneath
I'm
and see.
sorry.
You can still go underneath, and you don't have to, spend a bloody fortune on a room, but the war cabinet rooms are still open to the public.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And then opposite it, they've renovated the whole hotel, so there's a lot of World War II history in there. I know McCloskey, another ex-CIA guy and best-selling author, he had a meeting there with one of our listeners a few months back, and now I'm like, I have to get in there. Apparently, they serve very nice cocktails too. So you have the
I'm
history
sure
of the
they are.
cocktails on
And in
Whitehall.
fact, if it was David McCloskey you were referring to,
Yes.
that's my second choice, because I thought Damascus Station, his maiden effort, just hit it out of the park. Outstanding work of fiction. He was a CIA analyst and obviously found his true calling in writing spy fiction. I just read his latest one, Moscow something, or maybe it's called Moscow Station. I don't know,
So there
but
was Moscow X,
that's
um,
it.
and
Yeah.
then the Seventh Floor, which you might enjoy.
That's the newest one, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
He's out he really captures it. I mean, obviously he gets to play a little bit because it's fiction, but he's an excellent writer, great thriller. Yeah, so I love Damascus Station.
And, you know, what do you think he got so right? Because you obviously read a lot of fiction, you read a lot of real life intelligence reports.
Mhm.
So, what is it about his writing that you particularly enjoy?
Um, I think he gets right the internecine rivalries that sometimes can be quite boring, but he brings it, he brings drama to it. The characters, he writes excellent dialogue, operations. He clearly has a good understanding of how operations unfold. Um, I, gosh, and in Damascus Station, his first one, the love affair was well portrayed, and I don't know, I just thought he has a keen appreciation for surveillance and how hard it is to pull it off. And if you don't do it right, bad things happen. So he just all around, he's your all around great writer.
You're in good company with that pick because among our Spybrary listeners, he has many fans, and that was from Damascus Station when that came out, and
Yeah.
through to Moscow X, and also a lot of it was one of my books of last year was Seventh Floor. I thoroughly enjoyed that one as well, and
Or
I
I'm gonna
think
make a
that's
note.
when you get to read it, Valerie, you will enjoy because
I'll
obviously
be
there's a
back.
lot of internal stuff that goes on there, and what he does with his character Artemis Proctor. Does that kind of book, does it make you nostalgic for field work?
Well, it does. I miss my job. I loved what I did. I was very proud to serve my country. I loved that my focus was on nuclear counterproliferation, which, that and climate change are existential in their threat. And I loved what I did. So yeah, and the best part, of course, was being in the field. And once I was outed, I could have stayed, but it was like, well, what's the point? I had the best job. Ugh, I don't want to just sit in headquarters. So, um, yeah, yeah, makes me nostalgic and it makes me miss it.
See, you're a special breed, you former spies, because myself, I love reading spy fiction, love watching spy movies, love reading spy history. But, I always say to myself, when I read Ian Fleming, I want to be a secret agent. When I read Le Carre or indeed McCloskey, I want to be an accountant. Because I have to thank you, all of you, and to the many of you who listen to the show, for your service in the field. It's something that the vast majority of us just couldn't do or wouldn't want to do.
I suppose we are selected when we're recruited and go through the whole process. Um, they really select for certain personality types. I think it's called the Myers-Briggs scale, if you're familiar with that. I'm an ENTJ, and it's just whatever that means. It's the right combination of character traits that mean most likely with training and common sense, you'll be a good case officer. Uh, and yeah, um, my life has taken different turn and I don't regret it because what's the point of that? But I do miss my job.
What would your third pick be?
My third pick is The Sisterhood by Liza Mundy, came out just last year. I actually wrote a review for it for Foreign Policy magazine. It's the story of women in the CIA, and she does such an excellent job of conveying how hard it was. It's a hard job made harder by sexism, and which still exists today. I don't want to hear anybody tell me, oh, but there was a woman who was the CIA director. Sorry, it's still the same. Um, it's better in some ways. I mean, I'm overstating it, but she does this sweep of history, starting with, the girls in World War II and the OSS, Oh So Social, and highly, highly accomplished women with incredible abilities, but no one really thought they could do much more than file, because isn't that what women did? And she brings it all the way up to present day. My only reservation with her depictions, not so much with the depictions, but I thought she was a little too kind. This is just me. This is my editorial comment. She was a little too kind for those women that were involved in what they euphemistically called enhanced interrogation, which of course is torture. And in fact, Gina Haspel, who became director of the CIA, was, up to her eyebrows in torture. And basically, she, in her Senate confirmation, she said, well, I'll never do that again. I'm really, really sorry. And they confirmed her. Yeah, I have a real moral dilemma with that, but I understand she was a good officer, but that's not how you acquire intelligence. But that's a whole other conversation, Shane.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating one to hear from someone who's been in the field to share those views. What does that book, and in fact, Liza's been on, she's been on Spybrary, it was one of our most downloaded episodes. So is Yona Mendes, by the way, she's been on, so you're
Oh,
in good
then you
company.
know how great she is. Yeah.
I mean, an hour is not enough with her. You've got to go on a cruise and have 10 days with her, right? Because
No,
just an
she's
hour
terrific. Yeah.
is not enough. What do you think this book in particular reveals about women in intelligence that the public still doesn't fully grasp?
Oh, I thought she did a great job of conveying, explaining the sacrifices, personal sacrifices, whether that means foregoing a family, foregoing children, because, you know, women like men, deeply ambitious, but to be able to do what is required of women, sometimes you have to put everything else aside. A man is able to have a family because his wife runs the show at home. A woman doesn't. We used to joke around saying, oh, I need a wife. I need a wife to deal with all this stuff that you need to, that's not job related. So I think showing just how hard it was. And as she does a good piece this was in the 60s and the 70s when women were just getting into the operational side of things, and say they had managed to do that. They were overseas at a field station, and they reached a GS-12 level, which would maybe be the equivalent of a captain or major in the military. Well, when they came back home, back to the United States, they went down a grade. So it's like chutes and ladders. There was that kids game. Like you
Yeah.
go, ahead 2 steps, back 1. And that has changed, but there's still a pervasive sentiment of, can women do the job as well as men? Not with everyone, but with
Yeah.
many.
Yeah, absolutely. A book came out last year in the UK. It actually came out in the US in February, but I was just looking up here. Dr. Claire Hubbard Hall it was called Her Secret Service in the UK, and it had a different name in the US. But that was also an excellent book because she was chronicling women of the intelligence service, and I remember being really struck by the story of Olga Gray. And she was basically cast aside by MI5, and it was a bit like yourself in a way. It was a public court case, and at the end of it they just gave her 500 quid, and she married a Canadian and was always looking over her shoulder for the rest of her life. And you just think, what a dreadful way to be treated. That wouldn't have happened to a guy.
No.
Probably would have been knighted and everything else.
And women bring to the table a whole different set of skills, I believe, that are really useful, not least of which is you are much less threatening in an environment where in a culture maybe that doesn't value women as highly, or they're supposed to, be covered up, and then you can move around much more freely than if your male counterpart.
Absolutely. What's your 4th pick?
Maybe it's boring, but I gotta say it, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. I don't have to say anything more, do I? I mean, it's a classic. It's the text. Le Carré is just brilliant, and he captures the tragedy and the stakes so beautifully.
Do you remember at what age you were when you first read it?
Probably a teenager. I'm a voracious reader, so probably somewhere in there. Yeah, I've gone through all the Le Carré, but that one I'm pretty sure was my first one, so it was a good place to start.
Did you ever go back to read his stuff when you were serving?
No, I think I was too busy, honestly. But I have in later years. Yes, I do go back, and you can't see behind me, but I have a bookshelf of all espionage fiction and nonfiction. So I've got my Le Carré mini library there.
Excellent. So I was just curious. So, in the UK, he had a bad rap with the intelligence services when that book came out, because as I just said, you read Ian Fleming, you want to sign up, and then you read Le Carré and think, no way do I want to get involved with that.
No, I never do that. A terrible job.
That seed wasn't planted in young Valerie's mind of like, I don't want to join this lot.
No. To the contrary. Yeah, I know what his message is, what's the point sort of thing, as spy versus spy. But I guess I was recruited rather young, so by that time it was too late to have, and then I found out I was good at it and I loved it. So, oh well.
Fantastic. And then you went on to write some yourself, as we heard at the top of the show. So I'm sure that did have an influence on you. You said it's a boring choice. Why do you think that?
Just because I feel like it's so expected. I don't know how many guests you've had on who've said, Le Carré, but it's a classic text, and by which almost any other writing is compared.
Yeah, I agree. Well, in fact, it's either that one or Tinker Tailor. So it's
Yes.
one of two that.
Although that's one of my desert island movies, I suppose, rather than the book. I like the movie.
With Gary Oldman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it was, I wrote it down, 2011.
2011. I'm a big fan of that as well. And it's interesting in Spybrary circles, because some people are like, well, the TV show with Alec Guinness was much better. And I'm like, well, they had so long. They had, is it 6 or 7 episodes to tell that story, whereas those guys just was it 2.5 hours to,
Yeah.
the
Boom.
economy. And I mean, I enjoy the movie, and I also think it's a great movie for getting people to get back into Le Carre who may have read it years ago and forgotten about it, and also those who've never read it. Because I know a lot of my friends went to the movie and then said, "What actually just happened? I now need to go and read the book."
I know it is a little complicated. You got to like keep, watch the bouncing ball. But I love that because real life is complicated. Operations are complicated. It's not, there's not a neon arrow pointing you where to go.
Absolutely. So let's move on to I was surprised by your fifth pick.
I know. Me too. So it's Legacy of Ashes by Tim Weiner. And I'm sure many of my former colleagues will be dismayed. But I just read it like a couple months ago. It's been sitting on my shelf for years because it came out, I don't know, like 2005 or six, something like that.
2007.
Yeah. And look, you can't deny that the guy did excellent research. The rap on it is he never says anything good. It's all the bad stuff. Yes, that's true, but I think I respect his scholarship on it, and it doesn't mean that there were many successes, but there are also a lot of bad actors. There are a lot of rogue personalities that should have been reined in years before they were.
And does the book feel fair or skewed based on your own experiences?
Well, it's totally skewed in one direction. It's all the shit that happened, and so I don't think he purports it to be an absolute portrait. What he is saying is, here particularly his focus is on covert action and how many things went sideways for many, many years. And it should be a cautionary tale. Of course it isn't, but that's another story. I try to read everything, my news sources included, with a critical mind. And no, I mean, my experiences in the agency the people I met were some of the best I've ever had the great fortune of meeting and working with. And again, my area of expertise was in the nuclear field. So we had some grand successes. And so I'm able to balance that out. I know that. I live that. I know that personally with some of the little shadier history.
Yeah. Well, I'm really grateful for you for picking this one out because it's been in my bookcase for so long.
Pick it up like I did, and I'd be delighted to hear what you think.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to read that because everyone says it's biased and it's skewed, but I will pick it up. And it's the same actually with Peter Wright's Spycatcher. I didn't read that for years because everyone's like, oh, it's just a mad guy's, hysteria and paranoia and don't read it. But I read it and I really enjoyed it. Whether it's true or not, who knows? But I thought it was a really good read. And it's helped me with that whole holistic understanding rather than just going in with one view.
It's right. It's like, the blind man and the elephant. You just get a little piece of it. So you need to read widely to really get a better, more balanced view.
I agree. And I think what's been interesting to me doing the Spybrary thing is we just had a meetup in DC and got to meet, several former CIA officers and authors. And in my world growing up, the British intelligence services were always super conservative and Americans were full of neocons, etc. But more and more CIA people I am meeting are kind of like, well, actually, Weiner had a point in his book, and are very open about that.
Well, I have to say, in my years working with the agency, I didn't know what people's political views were. You do the job. I didn't know how they voted. You do the job. And a lot of that changed after 9/11, as the United States became increasingly polarized. Politics used to be sort of, don't speak sex or politics or religion at the dinner table. Now that's all we talk about. So it's just part of the larger culture. But when I was growing up in the CIA, I don't know how people voted, and I didn't care. You were there to do a job, and you were there as a professional.
Absolutely. You get to take some fun things with you, or to request them in Berlin. So first up, and this can be from fiction, non-fiction, totally
Yeah.
up to you, Valerie. So you're allowed to ask for one spy gadget. What would that be?
Well, I'll do a real one and then I'll do what I wish. A real one, I mean, this, as you have seen, I'm sure, the spy cameras are amazing. As small as, I don't have a necklace on, but if I had a little pendant as small as that or button, I think they're amazing.
Yes.
But my secret power that I wish I had would be, I guess, the Harry Potter invisibility cloak. How much fun would that be? I mean, you could go everywhere, listen in. Uh, you could find out like who Tom Cruise is really dating. Um,
Important stuff.
big stuff. Yeah. Um, no, I think that would be a great deal of fun.
Absolutely. You can recruit, call upon a spy character again, either real life or fiction, to help you escape. Who would you be calling, Valerie?
Oh, obviously James Bond, because he always lives to the next movie franchise. So clearly he's got a good record. And plus he's not hard on the eyes.
Hang
I
on a
don't care.
minute. Which one are we talking about, though, Valerie?
Well, my favorite would be Sean Connery, but any of them are pretty great.
Yeah.
Hello. What's the recent one? Craig
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Brilliant.
If you tell me to go through that door, I will.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets pretty cold and dark and lonely in East Berlin. You're allowed to take a bottle of booze to cheer you up. What would you want to take with you?
Tequila.
Tequila. Okay.
Hmm. Without
And
it,
you
'cause you can drink it straight or you can drink it mixed with anything. And it has the added benefit. I don't know if you knew this, but somehow the way it works with it's very low sugar and it reacts with your liver in a different way than other alcohols.
oh,
So
I
it's
didn't.
actually a health drink, is what I'm saying, Shane.
Hmm. Okay, because it's the one alcoholic drink that I can't drink because it makes me throw up. So I have to take your word for seriously.
Well, you know what they say about tequila in the States, or at least they said tequila makes my clothes fall off. I think there's a whole song about it. Yeah.
I'm sure. Absolutely. Okay, so tequila. You're also allowed to, maybe for inspirational reasons to request a spy movie to watch. Which one would you be asking for?
I would ask for The Lives of Others, 2006, because depressing as it was, I thought it was so well done, really moving. It's about East German Stasi and how do you get people to spy on each other, neighbors and
Yeah.
neighbors and I mean, sure, for entertainment value, take me to a Bond movie any day, great, or Born Identity, or what was the one with Redford and Brad Pitt?
Spy game.
Spy Game. Any of those are great, but
Yes.
for gut punch, I'd go for The Lives of Others.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal film, that one of my favorites, and especially, and I won't ruin it for anyone who hasn't watched it yet, but the scene towards the end, and I actually went to that bookshop. It's not a bookshop anymore, it's something
Oh,
else, but along Karl Marx Alley, and it looks the same. It's such a poignant moment.
ugh,
Superb movie.
ugh, yeah, yeah.
You're also allowed to take some music with you, so a record or a CD. What would you ask for?
Well, obviously, the only choice is Gimme Shelter by the Stones. I mean, those opening chords just give me the chills every time. When I was working at headquarters during and after 9/11, so I'd drive to headquarters during those awful weeks after following 9/11 when everyone was just sleeping there and eating there and living there. And I'd listen to that, Gimme Shelter. And it has such a great backstory. Mary Clayton, whose voice gives me the absolute chills. Uh, I don't know if you know that story. They were recording at Muscle Shoals in Alabama, I believe. And she gets a call. She's living there. She gets a call from someone at the studio. They want her to come down and put down some tracks. And here it was, Mick had asked for her. And she's in curlers. She's like 8 months pregnant. She's like, I really don't want to do this. But she goes down and her voice just, wow.
Pick. I need to make a playlist of all the Dead Drop 5 suggestions because I think that'd be quite interesting listening to, and maybe I'll put that up on Spotify.
Should. You should do that. Yeah.
Who would you like to hear next on Dead Drop 5?
Oh. So I have a colleague of mine. He's unfortunately he's come to all my conferences, but he's not able to come to this one, but we're going to beam him in. And his name is Jim Lawler.
Yes.
And Jim led the team that brought down AQ Khan, the nuclear entrepreneur. He's one of the best recruiters the agency has ever had. So smart, such a cool person. So that's my pick.
Excellent.
Unless I could choose someone dead like James Jesus Angleton. I got questions. I have questions.
What would be your number one question? If I could arrange that right now, what would be your number one question to?
Well, it's of the moment, right? Like,
Yeah.
What was the agency's real involvement with JFK's assassination?
Gosh.
I want to give them a truth serum. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Valerie, thank you very much for coming on and sharing some of your spy picks. There's one there that I have not read yet, which I'm going to, and that's always a good thing with Dead Drop 5. I would also share with our listeners that you recently gave a wonderful interview for Spycast, which is the podcast for the International Spy Museum, hosted by our friend Sasha Ringber. And go check that out. Valerie talks a lot more about her life there with Sasha. So do check out Spycast. Valerie, thanks a million for coming on. And
how much fun this is. Thank you, Shane. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure, and I'm hopeful some of our listeners will be joining you later this year on your cruise because it sounds epic. It sounds really good.
Well, I think you should come, Shane.
I would love to. I'm in between assignments. If I can somehow manage that, then I would love to come along.
You could do some podcasts from the ship.
I could. Yeah,
Just
it's a good
saying.
idea. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Russell, thanks for joining us. And you can find all the show notes, all the links we've mentioned, and all the book picks at spybrary.com/263.